We're going to look and see how the Quran shows that Jesus is God. We're going to start with Surah chapter 32, verse 7 through 9. It says, "Who perfected everything which he created and began the creation of man from clay." So it's quite clear that Allah created man from clay in this verse. It says in verse 8, it says, "Then he made his posterity out of the extracted a liquid disdained." 32:9 says, "Then he proportioned him and breathed into him from his soul and made for you hearing and vision and hearts. Little are you grateful." So it's quite clear that Allah breathed into man and he became alive. And we're going to continue on and see what else we find. This is Ibn Kathir's commentary on these verses. He says, Allah tells us that he has created everything well and formed everything in a goodly fashion. Malik said, narrating from Zayd bin Aslam, who made everything he had created good, means he created everything well and in a goodly fashion. When Allah mentions the creation of the heavens and the earth, he follows that by mentioning the creation of man. Allah says, "And he began the creation of man from clay." Once again, clay is important, meaning he created the father of mankind, Adam, from clay. Then he made his offspring from semen of dispersed water, means they reproduce in the fashion from the nutfah, which comes from the loins of the man and from between the ribs of woman. This is the two semens theory, and I want the Muslims to, of course, know that their God actually doesn't know what sexual reproduction is, because there is no semen that comes from the ribs of the woman. But let's continue on. It says, "Then he fashioned him in due portion," means when he created Adam from clay, he created him and gave him shape and made him upright and breathed into him the soul. Once again, breathing is important. "And he gave you hearing, sight, and sense of deduction," meaning reason. "Little is thanks to you give," means for those strengths with which Allah has provided you. The one who is truly blessed is the one who uses them to worship and obey his Lord. May he be exalted and glorified. So once again, we clearly see that the man is created from clay and that his breath is breathed into him by Allah. And we can see this is important because this is exactly what we find in the Quran that Jesus does. So we can see in Surah chapter 3, verse 49, it says, "And a messenger to the children of Israel. Indeed, I have come to you with a sign from your Lord that I design for you from clay, like the form of a bird. Then I breathe into it, and it becomes a clay bird by permission of Allah. And I cure the blind and the leper, and I give life to the dead by permission of Allah. And I inform you of what you eat and what you store in your houses. Indeed, in that is a sign for you if you are believers." So once again, we clearly see here that these are the things that Jesus does. But I'm going to hit the other uh, verse that speaks of this, and then I'm going to explain the importance of this. We can see in Surah chapter 5, verse 110, it says, "When Allah will say, O Jesus, son of Mary, remember my favor upon you and upon your mother when I supported you with the pure spirit, and you spoke to the people in the cradle and in maturity, and when I taught you from the writing and the wisdom and the Torah and the gospel, and when you designed from clay like the form of a bird with my permission. Then you breathed into it, and it became a bird with my permission. And you healed the blind and the leper with my permission. And when you brought forth the dead with my permission, and when I restrained the children of Israel from you when you came to them with clear proofs, and those who disbelieved among them said, This is not but obvious magic." So it's quite clear that Jesus creates and does the things that Allah does. And now, of course, the Muslims are going to jump on this and say, well, it's only by the permission of God. Well, they need to understand that the ability and the permission to do something are two different things, because it's quite clear that Jesus, he raises the dead, he heals the leper, he, of course, breathes into things and they become living beings. So it's quite clear that Jesus has the prerogatives of God. So, Muslims, what other prophet does these things with regards to the exact same way that Allah does? I would say, of course, none do it in the exact same way that Allah does, except for Jesus in the Quran, which would show that Jesus is not simply a mere prophet. But it's quite clear that Jesus is God because he's doing things in the exact same way that God does those things. And now, perhaps a modern illustration with regards to the difference between ability and permission would be this. Take, for example, Kobe Bryant whenever he was alive and the Lakers were in the finals. And the coach tells Kobe, you have my permission to take the last shot of the game. Well, nobody in their right mind thinks that uh, the coach gave Kobe Bryant the ability to make the shot. People understands quite clearly that Kobe Bryant has the ability within himself already to make the shot because he trained himself, he practiced, and yet we see the coach gives him the permission to make the last shot of the game in order to win the title. So it's quite clear that before the Muslims freak out and make a big deal about it's only by the permission of Allah, they need to understand that permission and ability are two distinct things. So it's quite clear that Jesus is God in the Quran because he's doing the acts of God in the Quran. I will wait for your explanations as to why this is not correct, but I don't think you're actually going to provide anything of substance. But I'll wait anyways.